Wednesday, August the 10th. She's watching me. She's always watching me. But that's okay. It gives me someone to talk to sometimes. I put her in a chair by the TV so that I can see her. She looks elegant, sitting there, black netted fabric loosely draped around her, eyeless face watching me, the white of her bones gleaming. I found that if I move her around too much, parts of her break off. She's even lost a couple of teeth over the years. Well, I guess the skeleton can't help it. I like having her around, though. She's like part of the family. I even give her a hat for every season. Right now, she has a wreath of sunflowers on her head, like a summer queen. Sometimes I think it must be so nice to be dead, to just be a skeleton in someone's living room, watching the world go by with no stress. No one telling you what to do or how to live your life. Once in a while, though, I get lonely, which is also why I'm starting this diary. The big city is so different from the little town where I grew up. I was just a country bumpkin, I guess. It seems like that is how people peg me these days. "Hi, I'm Abby," I'll say, sticking out my hand, strong and firm like a big city girl. "Hey, Abby, where you from?" "Little town, New York." This is always followed by a pause from the big city types. It's like they're doing a computer search in their brains, trying to figure out if there's more, if I'm worth talking to or not. Some will be polite and stay for a bit to see if there's more there. Others will just plain dismiss me. I guess it depends on what they want, what they're looking for. It's hard to make friends in the city. Of course, it was hard to make friends of buttfuck nowhere, too. I guess I'm just not a good friends-making type. Though when I have friends, I'm pretty good to them, I think. When I looked in the mirror this morning, I could barely stand the sight of myself. I'm well aware that I'll never be beautiful. Just a gawky, fat misfit. That's me. The face staring back at me doesn't seem like my own. At the very least, it isn't the face I want representing me out in the world. For starters, I've brown eyes and brown hair and very dark eyebrows. We all know that guys don't care about us brunettes. They want the bleached blondes with the blue eyes. They want thin girls with big boobs. Sure, I have big boobs. Bigger than most people I know. But that doesn't mean a damn thing when you are fat. I break the scale at 125 pounds, and no matter what I do, I can't get rid of these big hips and gut. I even do 100 sit-ups every day. Well, almost every day. Sometimes I forget, but for the most part I remember. And of course, I'm so lucky that I wear glasses all the time. I'm not one of those people who only pop them on to drive or watch a movie. I'm one of the lucky souls who can't see the damn alarm clock 2 inches from my face. And we know for sure that guys just don't like girls who wear glasses. They all say they don't care. It doesn't matter. But the minute some dude tries to kiss me, he's pulling my glasses from my face. Maybe he's hoping that I'll like him better being blind. I mean, here we are in the 2000s, and it's the same old shit. Maybe it's even worse. The below-the-navel pants that all the lucky skinny girls get to wear with their high-definition abs. How many hours a day do you have to work out to get like that? And what happens when you stop? I wonder if Britney Spears will let herself go to hell like Liz Taylor did, especially now that she's a breeder. Well, all I can say is that when I watched Secret Window, I was happy to see Johnny Depp wearing glasses. Actually, he's worn glasses in a few movies. One of my favorite movies is his Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, how cool are pirates? Ghost pirates. I just loved the special effects. How they were all undead skeletons swashbuckling their way around. And Johnny Depp is so hot. How could anyone not want to ride his ship? I love skeletons. Like Army of Darkness had some rockin' skeletons. I like skulls, too. I've been collecting them for years now. There's something about knowing that there is something solid under our flesh, like tent poles propping us up, and that fascinates me. I wanted to go to college and take some of those science autopsy courses, maybe be a forensic scientist or something. But of course, being from buttfuck nowhere killed that idea dead in the water. My stupid parents barely made ends meet, let alone put anything away to make sure I would get educated. Luckily, I'm one of those bookworm types, so even though I didn't get to go to college, at least not yet, I learned tons by reading and cruising the internet. But of course, cruising the net doesn't get you the sheepskin you need to get a job. So I'm stuck waitressing at one of the local tourist traps till something better comes along. Ooh la la! It's owned by a couple of rock stars who think they can grab some cash from the Big Apple's worms. It's kind of a cross between the Hard Rock Cafe and Planet Hollywood, an eclectic collection of celebrity underwear, corsets, bras, slips, thongs, even stuff going back to Betty Page. There are lots of shoes and boots. You know how rock stars love their platforms and their stilettos. There's a whole room dedicated just to celebrity footwear, which I guess is also more of a family room than some of the other rooms would be. There's more underwear than you would think, too. Tank top, bikini briefs, Speedos, yikes! Glittery diaper type things that I guess they tie over their leather pants on stage. At night, there are fashion shows, and a couple of times a month a burlesque act, complete with larger-than-life drag queens. The drag queens kind of scare me. They're so big and intimidating with their layers of makeup, giant boobs, and wafts of perfume. When it's slow, I'll watch the show from the bar, marveling how they balance on those giant shoes, and wondering why it is that so many men look better as girls than girls do. I guess the key is that they take great pride in what they do, whereas those of us born as the fairer sex just take what life throws at us and seldom try to improve so dramatically. Of course, those that try to emulate the drag queen persona look like drag queens themselves. I've seen it with my own eyes, here in the flesh, and back home on Maury, where he plays Guess the Drag Queen. I've only been here a couple of months, and the shock of all the big city newness is starting to fade. I'm still not comfortable around the queens too much. I'm always afraid I'll say something wrong or not politically correct. Maybe I'm not even supposed to call them drag queens. Maybe there's something else now. There are a couple, though, that have been nice to me. They ask me how I'm doing and tip me when I bring drinks to their dressing rooms. One of them, Storm, is more of a gothy queen. I've seen her as a man, kind of cute, but boy, once the eyeliner and long black wig go on, she's stunning. She's so nice to me. She tried to give me makeup tips once, and I ended up walking around all night looking like the Addams Family lost little sister. Storm dances around to Rob Zombie and Sisters of Mercy, and some other stuff like that. I'm not an idiot, I cruise the net, but there are no goth clubs in buttfuck nowhere, and so the whole deal is new and intriguing, but kind of Halloween-like to me. Another one is Mavis. She hangs with Storm, but she does the Judy Garland shtick. Mavis is one hot guy without the Garland crap. He's a tiny little blonde man, kind of looks like Eminem or someone like that. Walking down the street with his duffel bag, you'd think he was just some rapper from Chicago. And add some false eyelashes, the dark wig, and some fishnets, and my God, he could send almost anyone over the rainbow. And with those platforms on, he could just step over the rainbow. My Lord. Backstage really does look like a rock star hangout. All the booze and drugs and groupies hanging around. You never know it, really. Ooh La La tries to be fairly normal looking at the front of the house, especially in the family shoe room. But what lies behind the curtain is more magical than the Wizard of Oz himself. A lot of the other waiters don't like the drag queens, or they're just college kids trying to make a quick buck and don't really care about people or even giving good service. Being a waitress isn't my idea of a dream come true either, but at least I meet people. When I'm really lucky, I meet the same people over and over again. You know, the other day this really hunky guy came into the restaurant. He had that Johnny Depp thing going on. You know what I mean. Dark hair, smoldering dark eyes, quirky grin. Man, I thought I was going to soak my undies bringing him a beer. I even put one of those stupid souvenir sticks in his beer glass just to show him he was extra special. I think it only succeeded in making him wonder if I was nuts. He looked at that stir stick in the glass, lifted it out, and stared at the curvy boobs of the plastic lady, her round lips making the oh and ooh la la. Then he looked at me, fixing me with a dark-eyed Johnny Depp stare. "You trying to kill me or something?" he asked, pointing the stir stick at me. "It's a souvenir," I said cheerfully. "Yeah, right. It's a danger. You shouldn't do that." He put the offending stick down and lifted the beer bottle to perfect lips. I guess maybe I was staring because he put the bottle back down and snapped at me. "Don't you have other tables?" "Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you're okay," I said to him. He looked me over as if trying to figure out if I was worthy of his presence. His gaze traveled from my glasses down to my tight ooh-la-la scoop-neck t-shirt. I know... Oh, la-la-la, da-da-da... So they're kind of checking each other out. But I don't know if I could say these words on Twitch. "Yes, I'll call you over when I'm ready to order." He waved me away, turning his attention back to his beer. Why are the cute ones always so arrogant? You know, it's hard enough to get up in the morning sometimes without having some a man who probably has the whole world at his feet from his beauty, sneering at me. He had many drinks and nothing to eat. He just sat and stared at the wall of thongs and drank his beer. I noticed in my rounds that his right hand was below the table. I wondered if he was to the underwear. It wouldn't be the first time. Despite the all-ages advertising for the restaurant part, it was a fetishist fantasy. Almost everyone who worked there had a story to tell about catching some pervert off under the table. That got me to thinking, though, of Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike, sitting there while everyone around him ate theirs, none the wiser to his little hijinks. How easy it would be to drop something on the floor, crawl under there, and slip his delicious pole between my lips. Who would know? Just a quick hummer and off I go. But of course I don't have the nerve to do such things. I don't think he was doing that either anyways. But I'll never know for sure. As my shift was closing, I returned to his table and asked him to settle his bill. He nodded, the beer giving his eyes a glazed look. He tossed a few bills on the tray. "You got nice boobs. Too bad you got glasses." I stared at him, stunned. I fumbled in my apron for change. "No change. Just get your eyes fixed. You'll make more money." Mr. Johnny Depp stumbled towards the men's room. I hurried back to my locker to change out of my uniform. I took my hair out of the ponytail and freshened up my lipstick. I raced out to the front. As I had hoped, he was just leaving the restaurant and going out into the street. He wore a black leather biker jacket. I could see how nice his ass was as I followed him for several blocks. Again with the glasses. Why were people so shallow? My fingers clenched and unclenched in my coat pocket. Following cute guys had been a hobby of mine for many years. I'm not a stalker. I just appreciate a good ass, and I want to be near it. I like looking at a pretty face as much as the next person. I guess it started back in 2nd grade. My parents, well, I should say my mom, 'cause my dad had moved out by then. My mom couldn't get her shit together in the morning, so I had to walk by myself every day to school. It was kind of scary, and it was a pretty long walk. Looking back on it all, it may even have been close to a mile. There were ways to make the walk more interesting, especially when you were shy like I was. I spent much of my time walking, staring at the ground. It's amazing how much you notice when you really take the time. I used to like it when it would rain and the worms would all be crawling along the street. long and stretchy, inching along, oblivious to cars and kids. There were always kids that found sticks and would scoop up the worms, chasing each other with them dangling from the ends. Almost always the fate of the worm was predetermined. If it wasn't flung into some prissy girl's hair, then it would be tromped on or dissected or stretched into several parts until the novelty wore off and its corpse was abandoned. There were always dogs at certain houses. Some would bark ferociously, as if little kids were going to come in and steal the family jewels. Some waited expectantly, wagging their tails, hoping someone would pet them. I often did. Dogs are a funny thing when you think about it. So loyal in some ways. You could kick a good-natured pet in the head repeatedly, and it would just stare up stupidly at you, accepting its punishment. I wonder sometimes why they call cheating bastard men dogs. I guess they mean the other type of dog. Wild roaming in a pack scavenger dogs. Dogs that sniff through garbage and hump your leg if you're on the rag. Dogs never scared me, ever, even as a little kid. In walking, I was always looking to see who could be potential friend material. What was the secret code to making friends in this little town? I didn't know how it started, but I do know who the first boy I followed was. Billy Fishman. I made quite a game of it. I'd follow the boy beyond where I lived, pretending I had to go to the store or something. I'd walk a bit behind him, memorizing his gait, checking out his jeans, wondering if he knew I was even there, or if I was invisible. I'd figure out where he lived and would spend much of my spare time walking by his house. I'd spy on him when he was at the park, hiding behind the recreation shed as if he didn't know I was there. No doubt the kids saw me there and figured I was doing something that they didn't know about, which I was. I'd sit against the wall, drawing lines in the mud, while stealing glances at the boy playing on the swings or kicking a ball around. I don't know if he knew I was following him, or if it was just a coincidence that I always seemed to be where he was. There are no coincidences. So I followed Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike to an apartment building and hid as he took a jingling ring of keys from his pocket and opened the security door. Now I knew where he lived. I wonder what made him come into the tourist restaurant instead of one of the little pubs. Maybe he was staying with someone and using his or her apartment. It would be interesting to find out. I took note of the address. I realized that I was only a few blocks away from Vicky's house, so I figured it'd be rude of me to be in the hood and not make an appearance. Vicky was a friend, but not really. I don't know if I'm really capable of making friends. She's someone I hang out with, and that day she was home. We sat around smoking dope and talking about how nice it would be to meet Prince Charming and be taken care of for the rest of our lives. Vicky had it made better than me. She was one of those pretty girls who knew the secrets of the universe. She had the knack of meeting men, and they fell instantly in love with her. Much of her apartment was furnished by pining suitors she had scooped up and dumped over the years. Her problem wasn't meeting men. It was hanging on to them. She grew bored so quickly with guys, and yet they were willing to jump through hoops for her. I never understood it, except she must give really good head or something. I didn't tell Vicky about Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike. There was no need. I never told her about any of my crushes. I know what she would say. She would wonder why I didn't just ask him out or give him my phone number or something like that. She didn't understand how hard it is to be shy. She doesn't understand a lot of things about me. But then again, most people don't. Vicky used to work at Ooh La La, but now she works at a strip club. She started off as a cocktail waitress, but one night, amateur night, she had been goaded by a bunch of her customers into hitting the stage, and I guess she got hooked. She says it's way easier to bump and grind for 3 songs than to lug trays of drinks all over the place. The money is better, and certainly there were men willing to pay cash for her services. She said she never accepted money for sex from her clients, but I don't know if I believe her. I think she screws her customers, but just doesn't want me to know. That's okay. We all have our secrets. She's entitled to hers, and I'm entitled to mine. At some point, the phone rang. Of course, it was one of Miss Vicky's pining suitors. I rolled another joint and lit it while she teased the poor boy on the other end. She laughed lustily with that low, throaty voice that some women are born with, and others acquire after years of chain smoking. I'm not sure which way it went with her. She waved me over to her and had me listen in to Romeo uttering promises and lies, remembrances of some mystical night they had shared. Vicky kept putting her hand over her mouth to cover her giggles. I wasn't sure what to think. He sounded like a big dumb goofball to me. But what did I know? I couldn't really pass judgment since my batting average with the opposite sex sucks pretty bad. Stupid men and their stupid superficial bullshit. I bet Romeo wouldn't like Vicky if she wore glasses. How can such a stupid little thing like some glass and wire make all the difference to some people? It makes me mental. We giggled and laughed, and she even had me talk to him for a bit. Sure, why not? I told him how I like dark guys with big, and he assured me that he had the biggest. I laughed and dared him to show me. Well, shit, didn't he say to turn on the computer and he'd reveal all? I watched him waving his winky on the webcam. I found myself all hot and bothered watching it. He wasn't lying about being big, or at least he looked pretty big to me. Maybe I didn't have much experience, but I've seen some teeny weenies in my life, and even on a webcam, that was not one of them. Then there's a little bit of sexy talk. See, Romeo couldn't believe his good fortune, so the girls are kind of doing some stuff in front of Romeo there. Vicky was saying something or another back to him, but I wasn't paying attention. I was enjoying an unexpected moment of heaven. That's one of the reasons I hang out with Vicky. You never knew what was going to happen. There were no expectations, no hang-ups. It was like what the hippie days had been rumored to be, only now we were on cruise control at the dawn of the new millennium. After Romeo was finished, Vicky lost interest, and quite frankly, so did I. I liked looking at him, but now it's back to its little size. Vicky logged off the computer and turned to me. So, what do you want to do tonight? She asked. Well, shit, now I'm all hot and bothered, I joked, pulling my blouse away from my chest and pretending to fan my face with the other hand. Me too. We need to go out and find us a real man. Dancing? I asked. I love going dancing with Vicky. She was so hot on the dance floor, which was probably why she was raking in the loot as a stripper. Sure, let's go down to Boingo's, drink some pints, and sweat on the dance floor. I need to go home to change first, I said. I came here from work. Of course, be back in 2 hours, she commanded. Here, take one for the road. She tossed me a joint as I left her apartment. As I walked across the street, I was excited about the idea of going out. I like seeing people, especially at night, in their skimpy little outfits. I like to watch the mating rituals, how women preen and men steal glances, how each hopes the other is receptive, not misinterpreting them, how each hopes to meet a soulmate, a connection that could last a few hours or a few years. By the time I made it home, I was tired. It had been a long day, and I realized I was starving. After a while of poking around in the kitchen, I managed to cobble together a meal of cheese and crackers with a bowl of chips. I took my meal to the living room and planted myself on the couch to scarf it down while wondering what to wear. Idly, I flicked the channels until I landed on the news. Wow, it was indescribable, the images being played from one of the war-torn countries. I'd missed the intro, but it didn't really matter. What mattered was the anguished look on people's faces as they ran through mayhem to find sanctuary. Bombs scattered dirt clouds so high that they disappeared into the sky. Blood was evident on clothes and flesh as these poor people scurried for shelter. I looked over at her. It's terrible how people can hate so much. As I stared at the TV, something else seemed not quite right. I put down what was left of my dinner and went over to the skeleton. "Sliding away on me, are ya?" I pulled her up very gently. Over the years, I'd managed to pull off her arms and had to rewire her. It was a pain in the ass, and I didn't want to break her again. I propped her back up so she could see the TV better. If she could see. I'm not sure. She has no eyes. But I think they see somehow with other senses. If they have senses. They have no nerves, so maybe they don't have senses. At any rate, it doesn't really matter. It makes me feel better for her to be able to see the TV. And that's all that counts when all is said and done. In the end, I wore a black leather miniskirt and a black t-shirt with a plunging neckline. It would be a cold day in hell before Vicky went out without her assets showing, so I had to play the part. When I first met Vicky, I was still wearing country girl clothes, rock and roll t-shirts and jeans, and odd knee-length jean skirt. It didn't take long to discover what a mistake that was. As is my custom, I quickly learned to adapt. The night was spent in a haze of rye and gingers, cigarettes, and thrashing bodies. At the club, we danced until the lights came on. By the time we stumbled back to Vicky's place for an after hours, or should I say good morning, cocktail, we had acquired a nice young man named Brad. The first moment I noticed Brad, Vicky and I were gyrating on the dance floor, and he was leering at us. I liked the way his eyes glittered like a predatory animal's in the flashing lights. We sat on the couch, drinking beer and passing a joint around. Candles flickered before us, even though the early morning sun cast a reddish hue around the room. "I can't believe it's morning already," Vicky sighed. "No, me neither." "Anyone have to work today?" Brad asked. "I have the dinner shift, but that's not for, 11 hours or so," I said. Part of me was begging to lie down, but the other part was curious. They say curiosity killed the cat, but I disagree. This kitten is alive and purring. Brad sat between Vicky and me and had started to give us power tokes by holding the joint with the lit side in his mouth and blowing it into ours. At some point he spit it in the ashtray and we were all kissing each other. For the next few hours we explored one another inside and out. It was the most fun I've had in years, if ever. There was no time for more than half an hour of lying in a semi-daze, and then it was time to shower and get to work. Imagine my surprise when Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike himself came waltzing in a couple of hours into my shift. He made a point to sit in my section as well. I wondered what it was that had so captivated his interest over there the other day. He barely acknowledged me as I went over to take his order. "Coffee, please," he said. "Sure," I smiled as I walked away. I wondered if he had had as rough a night as I had. My legs were so shaky I thought I was going to collapse in a heap of quivering nerves from the lack of sleep. Too much sex, and now this. I went over to the coffee station to prepare his order. I put one of the ooh la la stir sticks in it and chuckled. He eyed the coffee and the saucer of creams and sugars. "Trying to kill me again, are you?" he said, picking up the stir stick out of the coffee cup with long, slender fingers. He reminded me of some sort of bird. Maybe a heron or a crane. I chuckled. "Ichabod Crane from Sleepy Hollow." "No, I'd chop your head off first." I scurried away and returned with a menu. He waved it away. "I'm not eating." He looked up at me. His eyes were black pits of coal, warm yet uninviting. He looked down at his coffee and then quickly glanced up at me again. "I hope that's okay. I'm just not very hungry right now." "Whatever floats your boat." He sat there for about an hour, drinking 4 cups of coffee, playing with a pack of matches and staring at the walls. Though I didn't think he was staring at the walls at all. I think he was dreaming beyond the walls, pondering some puzzlement I'd never know. He paid his bill and left me a $5 tip. No smart-ass comment this time. When I was cleaning up the table, I saw he left a book of matches behind. They were from Boingos. The idea of it sent a chill down my spine. I opened them up, hoping he'd scratched his phone number on there. No such luck. They were just an empty remnant from his pocket, along with some gum wrappers and a couple of lifesavers with debris stuck to them. The rest of the night dragged, or maybe it was just me. There was a steady pace of people, but it was never crowded. The thought of the matchbook was playing on my mind, and still, this very minute, it haunts me. Had he seen me there the past night with Vicky and Brad? And if he did, was he jealous? Why had he come in today? She has no answers for me. She thinks I'm reading too much into it. He just liked the ambiance, the thongs, or maybe he was a restaurant critic or travel writer. Maybe he liked me. Who knows? I have to agree, though, that it could be anything, so there's no point losing any sleep over it. And sleep sounds really good right now. So that's chapter 1. I have absolutely no idea if anyone's even here, but if you have questions to ask me, this would be the time. I'm just trying to see if anyone's here. No, I don't see anyone on. I'm talking to myself. All right. I'll give a second in case anyone wants to ask, but I do not think anyone does. I'm thinking, though, I'm going to read chapter 2. Or I'll see how far I get in chapter 2 because I don't remember how raunchy it gets. But I'm going to read chapter 2 from Mistress of the Dark, published in 2005. So you may notice the language is maybe not as it should be for 2022, but this book is like 20. I wrote it 20 years ago, so but I just thought it was kind of apropos because now that I've started reading it, I thought it was kind of timely because it is about a stalker, a person stalking the Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike person. So it kind of made me laugh to think about it. And so that's why I thought it'd be fun to read this tonight. But I'm going to read a bit more to fulfill my obligations to everybody. And if you have questions, just type them in the chat. And otherwise, I'm just going to blow on. Okay, chapter 2. So now it's Friday, August the 12th. The previous entry was August the 10th. So now we're on August the 12th. I had a bunch of weird dreams, but that's pretty typical for me. Dreams don't really mean much in the scheme of things. But when you're stuck in the middle of them, it can be a really big drag. Especially when you're stuck in a dream you don't want to be in. I mean, really. I could have some nice, fun, sexy dreams like other people seem to have, but no, I have to have crappy, scary dreams. Even dreams that start off like they might be some kind of fun turn out to be a big drag by the end. Worse is that I can't seem to wake up when the going gets rough. I've dreamt about this dog. I don't know if I ever even knew this dog in real life. However, I've always known this dog in my dream. He or she's there all the time, sniffing around in the corners, following me from a distance, barking at the moon. I don't know what his deal is, but he's always there. Often I feel the dog before I see his golden fur. Not really feel, but sense. It's like once I slip into the dream world, all my senses are heightened. I feel and smell things like I don't in real life. There's another sense that is awakened in my dreams. It's hard to describe, but I guess it's like some sort of psychic energy. I know things without knowing them. But not only do I know them, I know what will happen. But what is going to happen often changes just by me being aware it's going to happen. Then there's a slant, like a sideways floor in a funhouse, and my fears start to be reflected in the chain of events. With my heightened senses, I become more instinctive than logical. I go into hunter mode, where I'm waiting and watching and ravenously hungry. But it's not my stomach that's hungry. It's all of me. My blood crawls, my brain aches, my teeth yearn to tear and rip. But I'm usually paralyzed with terror, as if I can't quite fulfill the hunger that drives me. There are places that I go in my dreams that are real and familiar as everyday places. I fall asleep and there's that house on the street again. Will I go into it this time? Will I fall through the attic floor? Will dead babies come crawling after me? The house changes in location and structure, but that house still harbors something that lurks in boxes and ceiling boards. The dog pants in the corner, somewhere. Whenever I enter a new room, there is shuffling and rustling, as if something is trying to escape from my presence. The floorboards sag beneath my weight, popping as I walk quickly along them. This house has no firm foundation. This house is a soggy, rotten structure filled with nightmares and ready to crumble. I make my way around and through rooms, plugging my nose against foul I make my way around and through rooms, plugging my nose against foul odors that cling heavily to the air. Behind the walls, the dog pants and whimpers. It doesn't matter where I go. The dog is there. I crawl along exposed atom beams, hoping that if I can just shimmy across, that I will lose the animal. I jump down to the next level and run, more boards falling away beneath my feet. All I want at this point is to get out of the house. It doesn't matter which way I run. Which way I run, the house has endless rooms. Rooms with beds and ornate dressers, rooms piled high with newspapers and other clutter, a pile of skulls, meaty carcasses hang from hooks from the ceiling in one room, and I have to run through them and beyond them. At last, I find a window, and without even seeing where it goes, I jump. I land in a dumpster full of rotting meat. Flies buzz around in thick clumps, disturbed by my sudden arrival. I scramble out, screaming, and as I leap to the ground, I find myself face to face with the dog. At least I think it's a dog. It might be a wolf. In that murky dream way, the dog ripples and doesn't really take form. Yellow eyes glow at me, the only static image in the beast. It snarls and slobbers as I crouch down, my hands over my head to protect myself from an attack. Quick as a blink, I flip from ducking a dog to walking through a damp, foggy meadow. The day itself is bright enough, but the fog is thick as moisture from the grass, hanging heavy in the air. Clawing my way through the fog, I'm grateful only that the ground isn't snapping and shifting beneath my feet. At least, not like the house was. I walk until I come to the edge of the earth. Below me, through the dense fog, lies the rolling swells of the ocean. As I stare at the waves, the sounds of the ocean reaches my ears. Distant growling and rumbling sounds are gone. I wandered from my reveries into the living room. Monica sat there. I fixed her hand where it had fallen from her lap. For a moment I flashed on her hand with warm flesh wrapped around the bones that I straightened. Monica, alive and breathing. I laughed. I checked my email, read through all the horoscope columns I subscribed to, and chuckled. They were all so different, and it amused me. However, no matter how the authors worded it, today was gonna bear an element of surprise for me. It was just a crapshoot how I would deal with it. I clicked through some porn ads and looked at many clips of people having sex. It aroused me in one way. The idea of people screwing their brains out with all those people in the room watching them was kind of a turn on. But the act itself was so boring. I better just... Sometimes I wish that there were new ways to experience pleasure. The yearning that I had snuck up on me in the few years reminded me of that movie Hellraiser. Poor Uncle Frank was looking for the ultimate pleasure. And look what he got for his trouble. A trip to hell. Surely looking for pleasure wasn't a one-way ticket to hell. If we weren't meant to find pleasure, why would God put it in us to want more and more and more? And why would he punish us because we dare to find more? I didn't even think that if there was a God, he would get too upset with the idea of people searching for the ultimate pleasure. Sure, people point to Adam and Eve and the apple to show that pleasure is a sin, but didn't God create the apple and the idea of choice? And wouldn't he cut us some slack after a few thousand years to see what we would come up with next? After all, he ultimately created us for his amusement, didn't he? Or she? Or it? Later that day, I went to work and hoped that Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike would show up. He never did. I didn't relish the idea of going home to watch TV with Monica, so I went over to Vicky's house. She was lying on the couch smoking a joint when I walked in. You shouldn't just let anyone in, I scolded her as I came through the door. You didn't even ask who it was. You just heard a knock and said, "Come in." So what? The only people that come over are those that want to fuck me, and I'm so horny, so who cares? She held the joint out to me. I took it and sucked on it. "You're always horny," I said. "You came over to fuck me?" she asked, opening her gown a bit so that I could see part of her. I grinned. "Sort of. I thought maybe we should give Bratty Boy a call." "Why the hell not?" Vicky said and reached for her cell phone, which was cradled between her legs and the flaps of her long silk robe. Brad wasn't doing anything either, so he came over. We all knew what we wanted and didn't waste any time with boring old chit-chat. We started to kiss and cuddle. Vicky's housecoat slipped right off. One thing about the three of us, we were like a well-oiled machine. We worked in constant unison, mouths and hands expertly touching and stroking. I guess that's one of the good things about really enjoying pleasure. You just focus on the moment and forget about everything else. I couldn't remember a time when I couldn't focus on pleasure, when sex seemed just plain wrong and even at times nasty. Nasty because it seemed to me that sex was a power game. It isn't news to anyone who's thought about it for very long. Sure, there is loving, pleasure, urgent, power. But I was in such a bad place in my life that I thought it all was about power. And power was something that I didn't want to lose. So I kept it to myself, all rolled up in a tight, festering ball. I remember the first time I realized I didn't have to be thinking a million thoughts during the act. I gave myself permission to just hang out in the moment. And I think... So some more juicy stuff happens. You have to get the book to see it. Yes, life is funny. I've seen it happen before with other people. It's life itself that gets in the way. All that crappy life stuff. When you live in buttfuck nowhere, it's easy to have crappy life stuff rain on your parade. She made my body sing. I ached for her when she wasn't around. I smelled her on my clothes when I went about my day. I throbbed for her, heated for the moment when I'd see her beautiful face again. A face full of lies. Her tongue was wonderful when it was a toy, an instrument of pleasure, yet that same tongue cut me like a knife. And so a perfect lover once more falls by the wayside. I'm not the first person to experience betrayal, nor will I be the last. My story is everyone's story, yet the pain always feels fresh. I turned myself over to the moment with Vicky and Brad. I would never let myself love either one of them. Their talents lay within the writhing forms of their flesh. Why complicate one with the other? People who love aren't people who give pleasure. Those that love pleasure are like vampires, giving and taking vital life energy with a joie de vivre that belies any chance of being a decent human being in any other aspect. Brad was one handsome man, though, and he could last for an hour or more. Vicky and I never had to worry about being left behind. There was enough for everyone. More stuff. More la 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 happens. And a little bit of stuff. "What did it look like, Abby?" Vicky asked as she rubbed her wrists and ankles. It looked hot, I said as I reached for my cigarettes. I lit one and exhaled. I didn't know why I suddenly felt easy. I suddenly felt like I was left out of the loop, like they had experienced a pleasure I wasn't part of. Next time, I'll tie you both up and work from one to the other, Brad said as he lit up a joint. Yeah, I said, not sure if I believed him. Later on, Vicky proposed an idea. The three of us should live together. And for some strange reason, we all agreed. I won't get rid of my apartment. They don't have to know that. I'll just bring over a few things and play house until we all get sick of each other. Wouldn't it be cool if we could actually all get along? Imagine how low rent would be. But I don't see it. I really don't. So there's Monday, August the 15th, and Abby has a little conversation with Mavis about things we probably can't talk about on Twitch. And so Tuesday, August the 30th, I'll read one more entry. It has been a long time since I've recorded my thoughts. Looking back on my past entry, I can see that it's been nearly 2 weeks. Life has been busy. I moved some clothes and a few boxes of personal stuff over to Vicky's. So far, things are going pretty well. We're all pretty busy with our jobs, so sometimes a day or two will go by before everyone is together and ready to play. I think there is some unspoken rule about no one playing without everyone present, because when I'm alone with either Vicky or Brad, we don't do anything. The sex continues to be fantastic. More experimenting, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, I saw Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike again. He came into my section and sat at the same table. He sat staring at the paraphernalia and looked sad. I wanted to say something to him, but I didn't know what. So I brought him several cups of coffee while he scribbled some sort of notes into a notebook. I wondered if he was a writer, a restaurant critic, or just keeping a diary. He could have been making a shopping list for all I know. I followed him home again, watching the sway of his hips in front of me. He wore tight jeans that showed off his ass. He also had on a leather jacket. There was a bit of a bite in the air that day. The weather is so changeable. 1 minute it's so hot you want to throw in a pair of shorts. The next you are freezing to death. I felt nippy in my thin coat. I stood outside his building having a cigarette. I wondered which apartment was his. Imagine my surprise when he came out again. He had changed into leather pants and his hair was combed back, as if he'd thrown his head under the sink for a few minutes. He had a slight grin on his face, and he walked with a swagger. My stomach clenched. He had a date. I followed him a few blocks until he turned into a bar. I continued walking to my own apartment since it was only a couple of blocks away. He had gone to a nightclub. I quickly changed into nightclub gear. I didn't think for a minute of going to Vicky's house or even telling them that I was going out. In fact, for a while, as I hopped in the shower, I forgot I even lived at Vicky's. It was a very quick shower, no time for dreaming. I told Monica how I saw Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike go into a nightclub. My heart was pounding as I pulled on my nylons. I was going to track that man down. I was going to finally talk to him. I hurried back to the nightclub and paid the hefty cover. Of course, cover is hefty wherever you go in this city. I don't know what we're paying for since drinks are even more once you get inside. I grabbed a double rye and Coke and sucked it back quickly. I ordered another one and set to work walking around the first dance floor area. It was on the 3rd floor and in the old rock and roll area that I found him. He was leaning against a bar talking to a blonde girl. I stood observing them for a very long time. The way she tossed her hair and touched him when she laughed spoke of intimacy. I wondered if they had fucked yet. A slow song came on, some long-winded rock ballad from the 70s, and they hit the dance floor. They held each other closely as lovers do. Mr. Johnny-Depp-Look-Alike's eyes were open, staring with that sad, haunted look as he held her close. I wondered if she was the cause of his misery, or if he was just one of those gentle creatures that is haunted by sadness no matter what is going on. No matter what it was, I thought she was one damn lucky woman to be holding him so close. I wondered how his body would feel pressed against mine. Would I feel his warmth through his clothes? Would he press his pelvis against mine in suggestion of what could happen? After they danced, she went to the ladies' room. I followed her in. As we stood in line to use the stalls, I looked her over. She wore a tight black dress. Her figure was shapely and tiny. Her hair was teased a bit too much, almost like 80s hair. She had on pancake makeup that was a little too thick. It was running a bit as sweat trickled down the side of her face. I wondered if she was horny. I resisted the urge to tell her to blot her face. She asked the woman on the other side of her for the time. Her voice was high, and I realized it was one of those annoying Jennifer Tilly voices. How could he stand to listen to that for very long? I guess that's where the power of being a man would come in very handy. When she starts nattering on, just grab her by the hair and plant her face between your hips. I couldn't see any other reason a man could stand to listen to that, except for knowing he could shut her up and enjoy it twice as much. I didn't pee when I went into my stall. I just pretended to blow my nose and came out very quickly. She reemerged in a few minutes and studied herself in the mirror. She spotted the sweat streaks and set to work refinishing the pavement. Many minutes later, layers were reformed and retooled, and a fine coat of powder was dabbed to set it. I had to admire her handiwork. I could never take so much time troweling my face. I always wondered about women who used so much makeup. What did their men think when they saw them without it in the morning? Did the woman look totally different, or was there some semblance of the makeup queen there? Did this girl have some horrible scars or acne that made her cover herself so much? I looked at my own face in the mirror and compared it to hers. I think I was younger. Maybe that's why she piled on the makeup. Maybe she was trying to hide her age. I had on a bit of eye makeup and some lipstick. No rouge. Nothing else. There were bags under my eyes, but that's because I'd been spending my nights having sex instead of sleeping. As far as I was concerned, a few bags was worth all the pleasure. I realized she was talking to me. "Do I look okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Good, because I thought there was something wrong because you were staring at me." She snapped her powder case and slid it into her purse. "I'm sorry. It's just that you look like someone I used to know." I lied. "Oh?" "My cousin Brenda. She looked a lot like you. She died horribly in a tractor accident. She was driving and—" "That's quite okay. I don't need to hear the gory details." The woman stood up and smoothed down her clothes. She checked her hem in the mirror and clicked away on stilettos. I watched her go. She was not the type of girl he should be dating. She would just use him and throw him away. A sensitive man like him deserved a woman of quality, someone who would understand his morbid thoughts, someone who saw life just as dismally and darkly. For the rest of the night, I watched them flirt and dance and drink many martinis. Once in a while, I'd lose myself in the dance floor, catching glimpses of them out of the corner of my eye. How she laughed in his arms as he stared at her with dark, foreboding eyes. His intensity and sadness washed across the dance floor in waves, hugging me in a comforting caress. I knew he wasn't the one for her. She was captivating in a way you watch an annoying commercial endlessly because it was familiar. She was familiar. It dawned on me why she grated under my skin so. She reminded me of someone I used to know indeed, a girl who was in my 3rd grade class. That girl followed me throughout grade school and well into high school before she finally disappeared. Kimberly Evans. Kimberly Evans was her name. How precious. Kimberly, with her curly blonde hair that hung in loose ringlets down her back. Little Kimberly Evans, whose bright blue eyes were easy to fill with tears. She was such a little suck, that Kimberly. You could do almost anything to her and she would burst into tears. Untie her sash, bend her book, pull one of those ringlets. She was a sitting duck. Normally, I wouldn't have bothered with a girl like her, but she was always in the way. On the first day of school, she sought me out, and like a duckling imprinting on the first thing it sees, she's stuck to me ever since. Sure, I was nice to her at first, but as I realized what a suck she was, I grew to resent seeing her. I took different routes to school to try to avoid her, but there she was at least 3 times a week, waiting for me with that stupid grin on her face. Now here was that image of that girl, all grown up in front of me. I went outside to have a cigarette. As I smoked, I watched people come and go from the club. So many were couples, giddy with laughter or sullen from a fight. The sight of so many couples sickened me. Didn't seem right how so many people had found each other, and here I was, alone. I sucked on my smoke and thought about it all. I wasn't alone. I had my friends, and they kept me amused with their strange and wonderful games. I was living a life most people only dreamed about, and I should revel in it. Yet there was still something inside of me that ached, a void that never seemed to be filled. I threw down my cigarette half-smoked and returned to the club to see what the lovebirds were doing now. At first I thought I had lost them, but then I spotted them through the crowd sitting at a table. He had loosened up a bit, and a grin even flashed across his face now and again. I hoped it was one of those grins that guys give you when they aren't really listening at all, but are just trying to figure out how to get in your pants. The thought of them wrapped around each other in naked bliss turned my stomach, and I had just about enough of the whole scene. I decided to return to my own love nest and wandered down the dark and dreary streets until I returned to my second home. They were watching TV when I came in. They looked at me half stoned from whatever it was they were smoking. "Hey, you're home, Abby," Vicky slurred, reaching her hand out towards me. "I certainly am." I planted a big juicy kiss on her lips. I went over to Brad and did the same. "So what's going on?" I asked. I turned my gaze to the TV set. There was a light bondage porn film playing. "Trying to get some pointers," he grinned. "Pointers? I thought you two were the masters." "You can never learn too much." I watched the thing. "It's such make-believe," I said, sitting down. "Why don't we play instead of watching other people play?" "I'm kind of tired," Vicky said. "I just want to relax." "It's late, Abby." I looked at the clock. It was 2:30 in the morning. I'd spent far too long at the club. I realized there was no way I was going to entice these two into any sort of scene, so I cut my losses and went to bed. In the darkness of the night, I wished that I'd just gone home. If I was going to lie alone in bed with my thoughts racing, I wanted to be around my own belongings. They never did come to bed that night, and in the bright light of day they were still in their same spots on separate couches. I woke many times during the night, hoping to feel the warmth of flesh sliding in next to me. I didn't care about making love. I just wanted to savor the heat of another human next to me and plot how to entice Mr. Johnny D. Instead, I had to plot alone. Maybe the next time I saw him, I would be bolder. After seeing what he had trapped himself with, I knew I had to be daring and clever. It would be hard to untangle those octopus arms from him, but I was up to the challenge. When Brad and Vicky woke in the morning, I had coffee made and was reading the paper at the dining table. Vicky woke first, yawning as she creaked and cracked her bones. Wow, I must have been tired. Falling asleep on that couch, no wonder I feel like a truck hit me. "I guess you guys must have been partying pretty hard," I said, looking at the joints and cigarettes in the ashtray. "Oh, yeah, we're having a smoke-a-thon. You should have been here. Where were you, anyways?" Sorry, something happened. "Where were you, anyways?" "Oh, I just went dancing, that's all." "Without me?" Vicky pouted. "I figured you could use a break. You dance all day long." Our chatter must have disturbed Brad, for he stretched and blinked, his eyes sleepily. There's something kind of cute and helpless about a guy just waking up. Sorry, I just have to have a sip here. Hey, Abby, Brad smiled. You missed quite a party. He stood up and stretched more. As he went to the bathroom, I turned to Vicky. So, did you guys, Vicky reached for her cigarettes and flushed slightly. My heart sank. No, not at all, she said. She looked me in the eye, then dropped her gaze. Okay, so we did. We fooled around a little. Nothing kinky. I thought that we weren't supposed to... I know. Even while we were doing it, we were going to stop and wait for you. But we figured, hey, we've done it before. What's the difference? I didn't say anything as my heart pounded rapidly. Would you rather it was just you two? I finally said. Vicky looked shocked. Oh, no, not at all. I don't want him for myself. Oh, now my mouse. My mouse. Brad emerged from the bathroom. He looked at our faces. What? He asked. Nothing, I said. I told her about last night, that's all. Is there a problem? Brad asked. You know I wanted you too. You weren't here, and the pot was good. I know. It's okay. Sorry, where am I? I went into the kitchen to get another cup of coffee. Brad followed me in and wrapped his arms around me. He rubbed himself against me, and for a moment, I almost fell into a spell. It's okay, really, I said, breaking away from him. I turned to face him, and in that instant, I realized I didn't really like him very much. In fact, I didn't like him at all. He took my Vicky from me, and it pissed me off. I took my coffee into the bathroom where I took a shower. I left the door open, and as I suspected, soon I was joined by Vicky and Brad. The three of us kissed under the running water. As my soapy hands fondled Vicky's breasts, I felt placated for the moment. They took care of me, removing the worries of Mr. J.D. and his rancid girlfriend from my mind. The solace that I'd been seeking had come to me at last. Feeling more energized, I was able to get to work on time and have an okay shift. My two drag queen friends were hanging around a lot that day between shows, which always makes the time pass more quickly. After my shift was over, I decided that I wasn't going to go over to the apartment. I wanted to be alone with my thoughts, with my things. I went into my apartment and looked around it. How I'd missed my possessions. I sat on my couch and lit a candle. As I watched the flame flicker, I felt her watching me. Monica, you need to get a life. I laughed. I lit a cigarette and stared into the dimly lit room. 1,000 thoughts and memories flitted through my mind, and I had a weird dream. In the dream, I was walking through a forest. It was spring, and there were snatches of flowers growing here and there in pockets of pine needles. Beneath my feet was a mixture of dirt and dead leaves. As I walked, I was acutely aware that I was younger. My mind was naive, like that of a child. A squirrel ran around in the bushes, and the rustling sound annoyed me. Here and there, I heard creatures scattering as I walked. Every time something moved, I would hear a rustling, and it startled me. There seemed to be a lot of creatures running loose today. It dawned on me that there might not be any squirrels or raccoons. Maybe something was following me. The idea took hold and wouldn't let go. As the rustling sounds increased, so did my paranoia. I started walking faster as images of wolves and bears popped into my head. What big eyes you have. The better to see you with. I scurried along. I didn't even try to look for the rustling noises behind me. what big teeth you have, the better to eat you." I ran, and as I ran, the rustling grew louder. There was definitely something following me. I tripped and fell and cried out. My hands covered my head, but there was nothing but silence. As I pulled myself together, I looked at what I had tripped over. It was the half-decomposed remains of a young girl. I screamed as I recognized the face as my own. I woke with a start on my couch. The candle had burned down into a pool of melted wax, the flame dim as it flickered weakly. My nerves were shot. I clicked around the channels until I saw a music station playing Jay-Z and Linkin Park's Collision Course concert. I jumped around for a while to wake up and sang along. At last I'd shaken the clutches of the dream enough to get my head straight. I made sure all the candles were out, and I splashed some water on my face. That made my eyeliner run, and my eyes stung, so I had to do some emergency repair. At last I had my act together and decided to go back to see Brad and Vicky. It was only around 9 when I re-emerged into the bustle of the city. Since the weather was nice, people walked briskly to the places that people go on a pleasant evening. I took my time, trying to push the images in the dream from my mind. My eyes kept glancing at the bellies of the girls wearing the low-slung jeans and the tube skirts. There seemed to be a trend that would never die. Sometimes I yearned for the days of girdles and corsets. Some people were never meant to walk around with their bellies hanging out, and others should be arrested for looking so delicious. In front of me was a strange-looking man, or maybe it was a woman walking a small dog. The person had long bleach blonde hair, and the shirt being worn exposed the back and covered most of the front. The back looked decidedly masculine, but the woman wore big Hollywood sunglasses, so it was hard to tell. I followed the person for a while, sometimes racing ahead to try to decipher the sex. The person suddenly broke into a smile and embraced someone on the street. The man blushed and stepped back. I saw it was one of the drag queens, Mavis, from my work. I scurried by before he spotted me. It was too late. Mr. Eminem clone with his do-rag and red tracksuit waved at me and called my name. I turned back to look at him. Next thing I knew, I was being dragged along to a gay bar where we had several drinks. It was fun hanging out with Mavis and Steve. The owner of the bar happened to love dogs and took little Angeline to the back to play with his chihuahua, Lala. Steve was a drag queen as well. Big surprise. They talked about gigs and wigs while I perused the eye candy. The place was packed, though it was Sunday, and many shirtless hunks in leather pants cruised back and forth. Mavis was a hit in her workout gear. Her androgynous face had just the right angular shape that you had to do a double take. Her blue eyes had the faintest touch of black mascara. Bits of short blonde hair peeked out from her do-rag. Mavis had jogged about 4 miles since getting off work. I sighed and sipped on my drink, thinking of all I had done since getting off work. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Eventually, I figured that Mavis and Steve wanted to be alone. Angeline was returned at some point and needed to be walked. I excused myself and returned out into the warm night. Ahead of me, a girl walked briskly, her ass tightly swaying with every clip-clop of her heels. She wore a tiny pink crop top that was mostly covered by a mane of blonde ringlets. I wondered if she had a belly ring and quickened my pace to get in front of her. A glint in the streetlight told me my suspicions were correct. Her breasts were large and smooth, as if she were wearing one of those padded water bras. They bobbed as she walked, but they didn't fascinate me as much as her belly ring did. I stopped in my tracks as I saw the shape. Long pointed teeth glinting with rhinestones. A sense of déjà vu washed over me. Someone else had a wolf's head belly ring. The thought sent a shiver through me. The better to eat you with, my dear. The blonde disappeared into the night. I looked up at the street signs and realized I'd gone too far. I doubled back and found the right street. I could smell incense and pot smoke as I walked down the hall. I wasn't too surprised to see Vicky sitting on Brad's lap while he blew pot smoke into her mouth. They looked over at me with half smiles. "We've been waiting for you," Vicky said as she slid from Brad's lap. I stared at her. She was wearing one of her stripper costumes. She hardly ever did that around the house. Her large breasts were practically bursting from her tiny PVC bra. She had on a fringe skirt and mile-high white stilettos. She wrapped her arms around me and blew the smoke from her mouth into mine. I inhaled both the smoke and her bright ruby-red lips. "Am I interrupting?" I asked, noting that Brad wore only his briefs. He was bulging from where Vicky had been sitting on him. "No," Brad stroked his crotch. "We're waiting for you, as Vicky said. We're hoping you'd be home tonight. It is Sunday." "Sunday is a day of rest," I said, putting down my purse. "Exactly, and we want to rest with you." Vicky led me over to Brad's lap. Brad and I shared a joint while Vicky removed my sneakers and socks. As she licked my toes, I was glad I had showered earlier. "Vicky wants us to dominate her tonight," Brad winked. I looked down at her and she stared up at me with puppy dog eyes. "Keep licking," I said as I nodded to Brad. "Well, you'd better prepare the equipment while I get dressed." I pushed Vicky away with my foot and went into the bedroom. A wave of dizziness swelled through me, and I thought I was going to pass out for a moment. I probably just stood up too fast. I looked at myself in the dresser mirror. I looked pale. I pushed at my hair as memories of my nightmare flashed through my mind. I didn't want any more bad dreams. I wanted life to be peaceful now. I wanted to start fresh in the city, far from butt-fuck nowhere and all the annoying people there. Here in the city, I could lose myself. I could be free from watchful gazes and live my life in whatever manner of decadence I chose. Freedom to be whoever I wanted called to me. And as I stared at my image, I saw a geeky girl with glasses who yearned to be one of the cool kids at school. What would the cool kids think of me now? I chuckled as I thought of cheerleaders and football stars long past their glory, too young to be has-beens, too old to recapture past glamour. I'm sure many of them were out of college if they ever got there, and were now living the life of the mundane, with spouses and kids and minivans. At least I was tasting what life had to offer before I settled down. There was so much to do and see, so many people to do and see that I couldn't imagine being with just one. Except for that one. I'm not going to think about such things. I'll just say that I stripped off my clothes and found a saucy leather halter top and matching miniskirt. And they do more things. Things were much less tense after Brad and I had our fill of each other. Vicky was already snoring lightly, and I crept away to use the shower and fall into bed.